Hi everyone, welcome to Book Club. We are getting pretty far through Wonder. Are you guys enjoying the book? I know I am. It's my second time going through it, but I really love this book. We've got people coming in right now. Hi everybody. Looks like all of our readers are here, or a lot of them. As always, I'm going to be asking you guys some questions about the book. We're going to be talking about it, and you can put your answers in the Q&A box. Hi, Ian. Hi, Shanna. Glad you guys are here. Yes, Ian says, almost done with it. Yeah, some of you I know have already finished it. We try to read it a little bit week by week, but it's such a good book. I don't blame you if you had to run ahead and finish the book. Shanna says, I finished the book a while ago. I know, it's really good. So I hope you remember the section that we're talking about today. Hi, Evan. Evan finished it too. Okay. Yeah, we kind of try to do like a week by week, but sometimes you can't stop. Or your book has to go back to the library and you have to return it. So I totally understand. Great. All right, if you guys remember, last week we talked about that we were going to work on learning some words in the dictionary. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk to you guys about today. This week, I remembered to bring my big, chunky dictionary. This is mine. It's the Webster's New World College Dictionary. It's a giant dictionary, but it actually has really good definitions. I like this one because they don't use a lot of hard words while telling you what the words mean. And I really appreciate that because just like you guys, I'm still increasing my vocabulary. I'm still learning new words. And when I'm looking something up and trying to learn what it means, I don't like it when they use a whole bunch more words that I don't know, because that makes it really hard to learn something and they give you a bunch more stuff you don't know. So whether you used a paper dictionary like this, or you use an online dictionary, which is awesome too, the first thing I want to hear about today is what words you guys learned. I hope you did keep track of them. Feel free to write some down in the Q&A box. If you wrote them down or you can remember, write what the word was and what it means too. Aubrey's here. Hi, Aubrey. Shanna says, we have a gigantic Webster's dictionary. Yeah, Webster's makes some really good dictionaries too. Shanna thinks it's a college dictionary. Yeah, Webster's has like young readers and like student dictionaries all the way up through college dictionaries. They have a lot of really good ones. So I'm going to give you guys a minute or two to write down any words that you learned. And if you didn't learn any words this week, totally fine. Or if you've already finished the book, totally fine. But I hope you guys did. We talked last week too about context clues versus learning what the word actually means. And I thought we could go over that again briefly while we are writing down what words we learned. So a context clue is where you're reading along and the author uses a word that you haven't seen before. And based on the context, which means the words around that word, you try to guess what the word means. Now, context clues, sometimes it's the only way you can learn what something means. If you're just out walking around somewhere and you don't have your phone on you, so of course you don't even have a dictionary on you, and you see some word on a sign and you really need to know what it means, you're just going to have to use context clues. You're going to have to kind of figure out what it means based on the words around it, or ask somebody, or use some other means of figuring out what it means. But when we're reading a book like Wonder, the fantastic book we're all reading, and we do have access to a paper dictionary or an online dictionary, then we have a really good way of actually finding out what the words mean. Last week I also shared, this is a real story by the way, this is not a made up one. I shared with you guys the real story of one of my students was reading My Side of the Mountain, and the character makes a bed out of ash. And my student thought that that meant they were taking the ashes from a fire and then making them into a bed to sleep on. And I said, I don't blame you for thinking that. Based on the context, that makes sense. But then we grabbed the dictionary and we actually looked it up. And when my student read through each of the definitions, she saw, oh, ash is a type of tree. And then we went and we looked up what an ash tree looks like. And she goes, oh, that makes way more sense. Why would you want to sleep in the ashes from a fire? You'd get dirty, they'd be all over your body, it wouldn't even be comfortable. They're not very soft, or I mean, maybe they're a little bit fluffy. You know what? I've never tried to sleep in ash. Maybe I'm totally wrong here. But the bed that he was making, it made a lot more sense that it was made out of like wood or boards from a tree. So we too are going to try to increase our vocabularies by actually using dictionaries to find out what words mean and not just guess about it from the context. Okay. Let's see. Shanna says she wanted to find out what the word from Mary Poppins, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, meant. Yeah, I don't know if that one will be in the dictionary. All right. If nobody actually looked up any words in the dictionary last week, or you don't want to share what you looked up, that's okay too. You don't have to say in the Q&A box. And we're going to get started talking about the section that we read this week. But if you do remember, or you do feel like sharing, you can just put that in the Q&A box at any point. Ananya just shared a word. Anaya says, obtain means to get something. That's really awesome that you looked that up. I'm really proud of you. Good job. Obtain, to get something. Very good. All right, yeah, so if you guys want to share any more as we go along, just let me know what they are. Okay, so the section that we read last week, here is the week 4 assignment, was we were going to read through page 204 in Wonder. Yeah, so I think we all got there, hopefully. And the second part of the assignment was to look up some new words in the dictionary. So now that we did that, let's get into talking about what happened in the book this week. So last week, when we ended off right at the part where Jack Will punched Julian in the mouth. It's very exciting. Everybody had lots of opinions about that. A number of people said they felt like Julian deserved it, and we talked about that a little bit. So this week, Jack started off the section dealing with the consequences of punching somebody in the face. And I wanted to talk to you guys about that a little bit. So when Mr. Tushman asked Jack Will why he punched Julian, Jack doesn't want to tell him. So why didn't Jack just explain what happened? I'm going to leave this question up on the screen for a little bit so you guys can read it and you can think about your answer to that. But that's the first thing that I wanted to ask you about. So they have this conversation. Jack is there in the office with Mr. Tushman and his mom, and his mom's kind of upset. Mr. Tushman is very interested in finding out what happened, and Jack gets upset too and says he doesn't want to tell him. Now we know as the reader why he did this. And a lot of you felt that you understood why he did it or even agreed with him doing it. So why didn't Jack just explain what happened? Why did he feel like he wanted to withhold that information? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on what happened there. Yeah, Aubrey says, Julian deserved that punch. Aubrey, we talked about this last week. I think we did. Yeah, I mean, we see Mr. Tushman in this part when they're in this meeting, he says he feels that, you know, violence is never the answer. It's never acceptable. And he even tells, he tells Jack that usually they would just expel a student for punching another student, for using violence. Normally, they would just kick that student out of the school and you can't come back. But he didn't do that. He didn't, he's not going to expel Jack. Do you guys know what he actually said he was going to do? If you can remember, go ahead and you can put that in the Q&A box also. Shanna went ahead and looked up the word Uh, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious means extraordinarily good, wonderful. And there's an example sentence too. Good job. Well done on looking that up. If you've ever seen the movie Mary Poppins, that is where the word comes from. They made it up for that. Okay, Shanna says he was going to suspend him for Christmas break. You are totally right. Yeah, it was a few days until Christmas break, and Mr. Tushman decides he's just going to suspend him for the days until Christmas break because they're almost there anyway. And after talking to the families, he feels like that will be enough of a punishment. And he wants Jack to kind of think about what he did and think about if he wants to talk about why he did it. And he wants Jack to write a couple of letters to tell Mr. Tushman and Julian's family, hopefully an apology or why he did what he did. So Shanna says, and he was going to clean a lot, I think, probably for his family. But yeah, that wasn't part of his like punishment for school. For school, he just had to be suspended for a few days. But yeah, I'm really curious to see if you guys know why. Why do you think Jack wouldn't tell his mom and Mr. Tushman why he punched Julian? Anaya says, because Jack doesn't want to get Julian in trouble for teasing Augie. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. That's interesting. So if Julian is kind of the bad guy here, I mean, he punched Julian because Julian was saying mean things and saying, mean things about Augie. And then Julian said, you don't have to be, I think he said, you don't have to be friends with him if you don't want to. And Jack was like, wow, and just hauls off and punches him. So, yeah, I think I agree with that Jack doesn't want Julian to get in trouble for teasing Augie. But what does he think is going to happen if he tells Mr. Tushman what Julian said and what happened? What could happen because he talks to him about that? Gerard's here now. Hi, Gerard. Shanna says she thinks because he might not want to get Julian in trouble because Jack is nice. I think that was definitely part of it. Yeah, Julian, could possibly get expelled. Charlie, hi. Yes, this book was adapted into a movie a few years ago. Yeah, I think the movie was pretty good too. I remember liking the movie also. So if we go to the end of, it's right here at the beginning, the detention part. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, so Jack says, so they're asking him why he did this. And Jack is narrating at this part. He's talking to us, the reader, but he's not talking to the other people. He's not talking to the adults in the room. Oh, Gerard says, I think Jack didn't tell Mr. Tushman Julian punched Augie. It was because Jack didn't really like getting people in trouble. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Here at the top of this page, he says, yeah, so Mr. Tushman says, just tell me, Jack. And Jack says to us, the reader, I shrugged, but I didn't say anything. I just couldn't. If I told him that Julian had called August a freak, then he'd go talk to Julian about it. Then Julian would tell him how I had badmouthed August too, and everybody would find out about it. So yeah, I think, Jack is a good guy, but he says right here that if he explains what Julian did, Julian will probably tell Mr. Tushman what Jack did. And I think this is a very understandable response from Jack. He's a little bit afraid of, he wasn't being the nicest either. So if he tells what Julian did, he's probably going to get in trouble too, right? Yeah, Gerard jumps in and says, yeah, sounds like Gerard agrees. Jack probably didn't tell on Julian because Julian could later get Jack in trouble. Jack's a good guy, but it takes a little bit of courage I think, to stand up and explain what somebody else did if you could possibly get in trouble too. If Jack talks about what Julian did, he kind of has to have the courage to take responsibility for what he did too, right? So it's a bit of a tricky situation for him. And then, have you guys ever experienced that also, where if you, you know, tell what somebody else did, it can kind of feel like you're opening up a, you know, the saying is you're opening up a can of worms, you know. Right now, I think Jack feels like it's just between him and Julian. But if he involves his mom and Mr. Tushman and gets these other people involved, then it's like, okay, now everybody's bad and good actions are all being looked at. It might have been the right thing to do in this situation, but Jack decides not to tell, and he sounds like he's going to try to handle it himself. Paige asks, can you find the movie version on Disney? I don't know. I don't know. Paige, if you want to find out and let us know, that'd be awesome. We can let everybody else know. I'm not sure where this movie is streaming or available, but maybe when we're all done, if everybody wants to go watch the movie version too, then you can compare and decide which one you liked more. Okay, here's my next question for everybody. So a little bit later on, Charlotte meets with Jack after school to explain why no one is being Jack's friend after winter break. So Jack gets suspended. He goes home for winter break. When he gets back to school, all the other boys that he was friends with they're all avoiding him. And Charlotte says, meet me after school. And she kind of lays it out to him. She explains why no one is being Jack's friend after winter break. What is going on here? If you remember, try to explain how come no one is being Jack's friend when he comes back to school? Julian was kind of being mean. He punches Julian. He gets sent home. When he gets back, no one's being his friend. What's going on here? If you guys could explain in the Q&A box, I'd like to hear. Elizabeth and Anaya say that the movie version is available on Amazon Prime. So yeah, when we're all done reading the book, if you guys want to watch that, that would probably be a lot of fun to compare the two versions. Okay, so Ian says, because he is partners with August, or because of the incident. I think you're right, Ian. But Charlotte lays out there's a bigger thing going on. There's kind of a plot going on. What involves Julian? I mean, so Jack punches Julian. Jack gets back to school, and almost everybody is avoiding him and won't talk to him. What happened over winter break? It involves Julian. Charlotte knows about it. Charlotte tells him, what's going on here? Does anybody else know? Does anybody else know any more? Gerard says, I didn't get to that page. Okay, well, it's this part, it happens pretty soon after the last chunk that we read. In my copy, it's on page 170, they start talking about this. If you have your copy there, they talk about it on page 170 to 173 in the hardback. It's in the chapter called The War, because Charlotte describes this as a bit of a war. On one side is Jack, on the other side is Julian. So they got into it a little bit before winter break, and there's a punch. And then when he gets back, there's a war. But Julian isn't coming right out and talking to Jack about what happened. They're not talking about their disagreement out in the open. Julian has been doing something behind Jack's back over winter break. If anybody remembers what that is, you can jump in and talk about that in the Q&A box. But yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit. And if that, triggers anybody's memory, feel free to jump in with what you think is going on here. Gerard says, I think no one wants to be Jack's friend because punching a popular kid in school can kind of ruin the person's reputation. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Charlotte lays out for Jack that over winter break, there was like a big party, and Julian actually went around and got everybody to kind of agree to do this. Julian goes around and tells everybody. Him and his family are starting to make up stories. They say that Jack is like mentally disturbed. He's kind of like a crazy kid. They start making up untrue stuff about August. And he kind of says, for Jack's own good, we should probably all agree not to be his friend anymore. It's really awful what Julian does. But he kind of gets everybody on one side. Yeah, Gerard says that he's dealt with this kind of thing before. I'm sorry to hear that, Gerard. But yeah, you understand what that can be like. If people start getting together and deciding, it's kind of like a form of bullying. Julian is getting all these kids to agree not to talk to Jack anymore. And Jack was away on winter break, so he didn't really have a chance to defend himself. He gets back to school. Nobody's really talking to him. And Charlotte comes, and she's actually made a list. And the list basically says what the two sides in the war are. That there's all these people that are on Julian's side. There's a few people on Jack's side, but he immediately goes, "Oh no, that's like just some of the unpopular kids." And Charlotte's like, "Hey, come on." Jack's working on being a better person. He's through some of these people that he's becoming friends with, he's kind of learning to be a bigger person himself. Yeah, and then there's like people that are neutral. It says that there's people that are kind of like in the middle. They don't really want to pick a side. So yeah, she lets him in that there is this situation going on, and he has to kind of figure out what to do about it, how to deal with it. Yeah, Gerard agrees that Julian is not a very nice person, at least right now. Gerard says he has a wretched soul. That is a very poetic way of describing the situation. Very descriptive. I like it, Gerard. All right, let's move on to the next question. And if you guys, if some of these questions you feel like you don't remember the answer, you can just talk about what you do remember or what you think about that part there too. That's totally fine. I love having more of a conversation. If these questions are to kind of, help you remember what happened in this section and maybe give some viewpoints on it. But if you don't always remember so well what happened, you can just kind of talk about what did happen, what you do remember. That's fine too. All right. So the next section here, the next thing, here's my next question for you. So we finished Jack's section of the book, and the next section is Justin. And we've talked about this a little bit before. Wonder is interesting because there are lots of different viewpoints in this book, and I really like that about what the author's doing. She doesn't just write the whole book from one person's viewpoint, but it jumps around a lot. In this next section, it's a little bit surprising, is if our main character is Augie, it's kind of funny that in the next section, it's Augie's sister's new boyfriend is who we get a whole chunk of the story from. And the first time I read the book, I was a little bit like, wait, what? Why this guy? But reading it again this time, I think what was really interesting to me is that we get like a real, true outsider's viewpoint. This is an older kid. He gets an opportunity to hear about Augie first from Via. And then he meets Augie in person. He's still really surprised when he sees what he looks like. But then he kind of gets to know Augie and his viewpoint changes. Anyhow, when we get to the section of the book too, in Justin's section of the book, all of his sentences start with lowercase letters. And when he refers to himself, I is lowercase too, the word I. This question, I just wanted to ask you guys if anybody had a viewpoint on why do you think the author wrote this section of the book this way? And I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer to this. So if you are sitting at home going, whoa, I don't know why she did that, I'm not going to say anything. Don't worry about it. There's not a wrong answer to this question because the author doesn't say why she wrote it this way. My guess is as good as yours. And I would love to hear if you guys have any guess or any thought about why it is this way. Shanna guesses maybe he's not as important in the book. Maybe that is why the letters are not capitalized and there's not much punctuation. All right. Yeah, Gerard is asking, why does the author use lowercase sentences to begin, or lowercase letters to begin sentences in Justin's viewpoint? Yeah. So in this section of the book, everything that Justin is saying is not really written the way that you usually see things written in a book. Normally, every sentence when we write begins with a capital letter. You capitalize the word I, but in his section of the book, there are no capital letters except when it's somebody else's name in like the middle of a sentence. Actually, as it goes on, the first time he talks about Via, Augie's sister, her name is capitalized. But after that, even Olivia is not capitalized anymore. So I think it's really interesting. Even like the names of cities, other things that we normally capitalize, like Brooklyn, are not capitalized. Valentine's Day, which is a holiday, not capitalized. So everything Justin's saying, it's all like lowercase letters. Also, when he talks to people, they're not using quotation marks a lot of the time. He talks to, like when it says what Via or other characters are saying, there's no quotation marks around it. So it's really like stripped down. They take out a lot of punctuation, and she takes out a lot of capital letters during Justin's part. I thought that was really interesting. And I, to myself, had my own ideas about like why I think she is maybe doing that. But I just wanted to hear from you guys. Gerard, I think you're running a little bit behind where we got to in the book this week. Because Gerard is asking, who the heck is Justin? Justin is Augie's sister's new boyfriend. Back in her section of the book, she mentions meeting this new person. And now the author is now writing the story from his viewpoint. And I think it's really interesting. We get to see Augie's family through his eyes. We get to see some situations that are going on through his eyes. Justin is talking with Jack Will when Julian and some other boys come up and are teasing Jack. And then we get to experience this through this older boy's viewpoint, and how he reacts to it is pretty funny. But yeah. Okay, Elizabeth says, since each character talks about their side, maybe that is just how Justin writes. I think that's a really good guess. Gerard says, did the author just forget how to use the correct letters? I don't think so, Gerard. I think it's on purpose. You know, there's editors. They make sure that when an author writes a book, they make sure that it's all spelled correctly and punctuated correctly. So this is definitely the way the author wanted it to look. Also, when Justin's section is over, it goes back to the normal way. Gerard goes on to say, maybe they just hit their head. They forgot English or how to write English. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think I like Elizabeth's guess the best so far. You guys all have good ideas here. But yeah, Elizabeth says, you know, each character in this story is telling their side of the story. They're kind of talking about their experiences. So maybe that's how he writes. I think you are on to something. But not everything in Justin's part of the story is something that he's writing down. But could the way the author writes that person's section tell you something about the person? I think it's possible. I know from just the things that Justin does in this part of the book, and the way he talks and reacts to things, we kind of get an impression of what kind of a person Justin is. Is Justin like a super loud, obnoxious, like wild and crazy guy? Did you guys get that impression? Shanna says, I like Elizabeth's guess too. Go Elizabeth. Shanna says, Justin is quiet. Yeah, Justin's a pretty quiet guy. He plays the fiddle. He seems like he's pretty intelligent. He's very friendly. Is it possible that the way the author wrote his section is supposed to kind of make you feel more of what kind of person Justin is? I think it's definitely possible. Now, again, I don't know that there's a right or a wrong answer to this. It's really just our best guess. But yeah, that's my guess, is that through the way she wrote this chunk of the book, she's trying to give you more of a feeling of what kind of dude he is. Shanna goes on to say, he seems kind of, she says, he seems kind of like me, quiet, low-key, and, well, quiet. But yeah, I think you're right. He's a musician, he's quiet, he's intelligent. So I think the author was just trying to make us feel more of that by the way that she just made everything lowercase. The words kind of maybe seem quieter when they're written that way. Gerard says, based on the way Summer's written, she seems like someone I'd like to meet. Yeah, I agree. And Shanna says that Justin is non-violent too. Yeah. Now, when he does see Julian and those other boys being mean, after Augie and Jack joked and pretended that he had a machine gun in his fiddle case, he goes over and he says to the bullies, he's like, you better leave this kid alone. And he tries to make like a deep voice and he holds up his fiddle case, and the three bully boys are like, you know, they're like super scared of this like older teenage guy who they think maybe has a machine gun in his violin case. I thought that part was pretty funny. I don't know what you guys thought. Evan says, yes, he's funny. Shanna says, everyone seems like someone I would like to meet. Everyone but Julian. Yeah, we seem like we have a lot of people that don't like Julian in this book club. You know, there's like a sequel chunk to the book where you actually get to see things from Julian's perspective. I haven't read that part, but people have told me it's good. I wonder if we all read that, if we would like Julian more after that part. Aubrey, it looks like you're kind of copying and pasting some chunks into the Q&A. Aubrey, did you have a question about those chunks, or did you want to talk about those parts or ask something? If so, just let me know. If you need help with those chunks, let me know too. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you're trying to tell us by pasting these parts in, so just let me know. AG says, Julian is okay. I read the sequel. While Gerard says, I hate Julian no matter what. Well, Gerard, maybe we need to give Julian another chance. Maybe if we see things from what he's going through, we might like him more. Shanna says, I might like Julian better if I could meet him and set him straight about, yeah. Oh yeah, AG says, if you read that sequel book, it has Julian, Charlotte, and Christopher. I'm not sure I know who Christopher is. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody. AG, maybe you can fill us in on who Christopher is in the sequel. All right, guys, I have one more question for you for today. So this is kind of like earlier with Jack and Jack's ability to communicate to people or not. When Jack's talking with Justin, he tells him about how all the boys have turned against him, but he won't tell any teachers. And Justin seems to be a little bit like, you should talk to a teacher. And Jack is like, no. So how come Jack won't tell any of the teachers what's going on with this war, with Julian kind of lying and telling all these untrue things? Oh, okay, Aubrey's just sharing her favorite part. Yeah, there's this whole section where Augie and Jack are like emailing each other back and forth, and they are texting, and they kind of become friends again. And it's really nice. You see it kind of happen through this conversation. I really like that part too, Aubrey. Thanks for sharing. Oh yeah, thank you, AG. Yeah, so Christopher is Augie's friend when he was young, but Chris moved away. So, okay. So yeah, we get I guess in the sequel, we get to read some things from his perspective. That sounds interesting. Paige, checking back in. Paige has been looking for the movie for everybody. She says, I can't find it on Disney Plus or Netflix. Well, it sounds like it might be something that people need to go and rent through Amazon or through another method. Anyway, yeah, if you guys want to go watch the movie, that'd be awesome. Shanna says, okay, so about this question, Shanna says, he is nice, so he does not like to get people in trouble. I do not like to get people in trouble either. Gerard says, I think it's because Jack doesn't want to get people involved too much. Yeah, I think Jack has this idea that talking to other people, especially adults, about the problems he's going through isn't going to help the situation. But at the same time, just trying to ignore it and handle it on his own doesn't always work out the best either. Do you guys think that if he talked to his parents or to a teacher that he might be able to actually fix the situation? Yeah. Oh man, okay. I think Anaya shared another word that they learned. Reckless, which means careless or dangerous. That is awesome. Thank you for learning another word. That's amazing. It makes me really happy when you guys are increasing your vocabulary. All right, Gerard says, I guess I could give Julian a chance until he changes. Elizabeth, about this question, says, I think it's because he doesn't want to show his side, and if he gets other people in trouble, it might make it worse. Yeah, I think Jack thinks that it's just better to try to suffer through the situation and handle it on his own and not get teachers involved. Maybe in the past, getting teachers involved made it worse. Makes me feel kind of sad. I mean, I wish Jack would ask for some help. He might be able to handle the situation a lot sooner. Gerard agrees, though. He says if Jack talked to his mom would be no help. Well, maybe not. Elizabeth, Gerard thinks that your answers are awesome. And Shanna wants everybody to know that you can rent Wonder the movie on Amazon. She says that it costs $5.99 to rent. So there you go. If you guys want to watch the movie, it is PG. It's well rated, and it's on Prime Video, which is through Amazon. So there you go. All right. Well, if you guys have any other thoughts on the book or want to share anything else, we have just a few minutes left. Gerard Elizabeth says, thank you. Paige says that she is liking the book so far. She is sad that she can't find the movie though. Paige, apparently ask your parents to try to download the movie on Amazon. Apparently you can watch it through Amazon. All right. So with just a couple minutes left, let's talk about what we're going to read. We only have I had one more question. I still don't think we have time. Maybe we'll talk about that question next week. Okay, so for this next section, we're going to read through the section, The Fairgrounds. So this week's assignment, it starts on part 6. So Gerard and everybody else, we are starting with this chunk called, it's part 6. It's where Augie is the narrator again. Okay, Part 6, August is the narrator. And we are reading through the little 2-page chapter called The Fairgrounds. So start that little chunk, read to the end of the next page. That's where we're reading to. In the hardback version, that's to page 260, okay? Page 260, or if you have a different edition of the book, we're reading through the end of The Fairgrounds. So everyone, when we finish this chunk of the book, we only have one chunk left. So we'll meet the next 2 Tuesday afternoons, and then we'll be all done with the book. So again, this week, the other thing that I would like everybody to do is get a paper dictionary like this, or use an online dictionary. And I want everyone to learn some new words this week. And just get really curious, ask what some words mean, find out what they mean in the dictionary, and I want you to write it down. So the next Tuesday, when we meet again in the Q&A box, like a few of you did, which was fantastic, I want you to write down what word you looked up and what it meant, so that we can all continue increasing our vocabularies. Okay? Any questions about that? If you do have a question, just let me know in the Q&A box. Let's see. You're very welcome, Shanna. It's been good seeing you too, through the form of a webinar. Gerard says, really liking some of the book, not every part of the book. Okay. Let's see. Gerard says in the paperback version of the book, it is page 355. Okay, that seems like that might be too much, but I'll take your word for it. But yeah, we are starting on in the hardback, page 205. I feel like page 355 might be too much, but just check for yourself. We're starting at part 6 and we're reading through The Fairgrounds. Gerard learned the word oblivious. That's fantastic. Good job. All right, bye everybody. I will see you next week. You're very welcome, Evan. Bye everybody else. It's been good reading with you guys and talking. Right before we end, Shanna says she learned the word futile. Futile. Oh man, I hope I'm suddenly not sure if I'm saying that correctly out loud, but that's what the pronunciation key is for. All right, bye everybody. I will see you next week.